Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. All right, back at it again. Welcome back to Extension Calling.
Yeah, Karen, we have survived February, but it was a tough one. It did its part. It hit us pretty hard. A lot of ice, a lot of deep freezes.
That's what February is good for.
But you got to do things at certain times of the year too, so people learn to deal with it, and they kind of expect it sometimes.
Yeah. So another thing that we're going to be dealing with, it's no longer an if. We will be dealing with it. It's just, when are we going to start? And that is spotted lanternfly.
That's right. And we did a show on spotted lanternfly in the past, and we're going to give you an update on things that came out, some more management ideas, and some products that you could even use. But it's one of those things where you have to remember insects reproduce exponentially. And when you start finding egg masses, and there's been confirmed counties in Ohio.
Well, we've got 4 in West Virginia and I believe 2 in Ohio as of the last report in February 15th.
Well, in that case, I got 4 in Ohio, so 4 and 4. So think about this. You got a pest. It reproduces exponentially, and at that point of high populations where it does the most damage. So when we're finding eggs, that means we're at that point where you don't know if it's going to happen this year. You don't know if it's going to happen next year. But it's when they hatch, and they hatch in enough numbers, and they get a couple life cycles in there. Boom, you have an infestation.
Right. And I do want to make a clarification on the counties involved. So the 4 counties in West Virginia are where there is an observed and recorded infestation of spotted lanternfly, meaning there's eggs that have been found and reproductive colonies.
Okay.
However, the location of adult individual finds of lanternfly, where it's just hitchhike along, those are much more numerous. The adults hitchhike very easily. They fly into your car when you're not paying attention. And so the 4 counties in West Virginia are places where there have been confirmed infestations present.
Yeah, and let me clarify Ohio as well. There's been detections.
Right.
Not large infestations, but in the 4 counties in Ohio, egg masses have been found. In some of those counties, adults have also been found, but they haven't found an infestation as of yet.
Right. And the thing that you need to recognize with the spotted lanternfly is the longer we can hold off on getting a large infestation, the better chances we have of controlling the infestation that we have. So that's why it's really important for you as our listeners to be out looking for it pretty regularly. So we really want to encourage you to learn what it looks like, learn what the egg masses look like, and get out there and check your cars, check your trees. And if you are like one of the billions of people that has Tree of Heaven on their property, that is a great place to start looking, because that is their preferred host.
Right. And it's a preferred host because of that strong sap flow that they just work with. That's just the way their physiology is set up. So Tree of Heaven, very aggressive grower, aggressive invasive species, and it just works well with the spotted lanternfly because of that sap flow. That's one of the reasons why they seem to like it so much. It's a softer tree, and they can feed plentiful and easily, which means it can reproduce quickly using that kind of host.
Right. And during the time where the adults are flying is May through October, you can find them on Tree of Heaven that entire time. And there's only one other plant species that they've found for the spotted lanternfly to be on all year round, and that is, unfortunately, grapes. So if you have a vineyard or you have a woodlot that has a lot of wild grapes in it, again, those are going to be places you're going to be looking for spotted lanternfly evidence.
Yeah, and currently from the window of January until May, when we start seeing them in the Tree of Heaven, what you'll find are the egg masses. And right now, we as citizens, I know the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, all the major agencies, right now the scouting for the egg masses is strong, and it is the priority. So from January to May, that's when you're going to find those egg masses on just about anything. Ideally, as far as the insect physiology goes, you'll find them on Tree of Heaven.
Right, right. Before I get into that, I also want to say that when we get to the higher concentrations, May and June, you're going to find them on a lot of your more perennial plant species. So you could find them on their roses, in your vegetable garden. They'll only feed for short periods of time on those plants because they really don't have enough sap flow to support the long-term feeding of these insects. Whenever these insects detect a decline in sap flow, they move on to the next thing, which is really hard when you're trying to determine how long the insect's been there and what their spread is, because it depends on what they're feeding on and how quickly they're going to move and things like that.
Yeah, it's a leaf hopper, so it doesn't fly really well. It gets its name because it has spots on its wings, and when it opens up its wings, it has red color that you can see, but it's kind of this purple bluish color with spotted wings, and it's a sapsucker. So imagine it. I like to think of it as a large aphid. What it'll do is it'll tap into the tree, start taking all the sugars that are being transported in the phloem, and it'll just kind of go through its body, and as it does, it excretes the waste from it.
Is it poop? Okay, you're allowed to say that.
Yeah, I was like, what's the word for insect butt?
It would be frass, but the liquid is honeydew. Got fancy names for poo.
What happens is, all right. So here's what happens, and this is the important part. So it excretes this basically sugar water that's going through the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a sticky residue all over the place because it sprays it. And then mold comes in, and then it becomes slippery. It becomes black. It starts attracting hornets, and it brings diseases. So it makes a mess. It makes things unpleasant, and that spray goes far. So it creates a major mess. And if you have an orchard, if you have a vineyard, imagine just an infestation of insects that are feeding on the vine, making this black sooty mold everywhere. It's ruining your crop.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this particular insect has been very effective in killing grapevines. So if you are manning a vineyard, if you do own a vineyard, please reach out to the Department of Agriculture or the Extension Service in your state and get a plan down now as to how you are going to monitor for and manage once it's discovered, because otherwise you may end up losing your vineyard, and no one wants that. We all love grapes. We all love, well, maybe all of us don't love wine, but I sure do. But, you got to make sure that you have a plan in place so that you're not scrambling to find a pesticide that's appropriate when you're in that, oh no, it's here stage of infestation.
Right. And the signs and symptoms that you're going to find spotted lanternfly are that oozing sap and weeping. So as it taps into that phloem, and it's typically high flow phloem, when it's feeding, it's excreting. But when it's not feeding, what happens is that tree starts weeping. So you'll start to get sap coming from the wounds. You'll see wilting, you'll see leaf curling, you'll see dieback, and that presence of a black sooty mold are all the red flags for spotted lanternfly.
Right. And so if you are out there looking and you see some signs and symptoms of spotted lanternfly, we do encourage you to reach out to your state's Department of Agriculture. In West Virginia, you would contact Bugbusters at wvda.us and report that you think you have found spotted lanternfly. The egg masses look kind of like a splotch of mud, but let's just say that the spotted lanternfly are really in a hurry to lay these eggs, and they don't always cover them thoroughly. So sometimes you'll see rows of eggs that aren't covered. They line them up parallel, and so you'll have like 6 rows across. They usually have about 37 eggs per mass, and that's one of the distinctive characteristics. And sometimes they cover them, sometimes they forget, sometimes they just do a poor job and only cover half of them. But keep an eye out for the eggs, especially through May. If you find them and report them, then you can look at spraying those eggs with dormant oil or horticultural oil. Now, the trick to know is that horticultural oil is only effective when it's over 40 degrees. So on these cold February days, if you find some egg masses, you might get out there and spray them. You do a better job of scraping them into a bottle, a wide mouth bottle full of rubbing alcohol or something like that, because if you scrape them just onto the ground, those eggs are still viable. So you want to squash them or drop them into rubbing alcohol during those colder days. So until it gets to be 40 degrees regularly, and that's, the full day, not just during the sunlight time, you want to utilize scraping the egg masses instead of spraying them.
Yeah, and let me just add on to that. Right now, we are currently on a major lookout for this pest. So make sure that you call ODA. If you want me to be the intermediate on the Ohio side, I'm sure every extension office will be happy to help be that intermediate between you and the Department of Agriculture in your state. But reporting right now is critical. So before you start destroying it, take a picture of it, report it, see what they want you to do. We're not close to that hatching cycle yet. That's in May. So, you have a little bit of time, but just kind of see how they want you to proceed so that it's done systematically in a way that is most beneficial to the state. So try to report it as soon as you can. And if they turn around and say, excellent, send us a picture, destroy it, follow their directions. But reporting is going to be one of the most critical things right now.
Yes, indeed. Report it. If you think you found it, let us know. And Dan is right. Reach out to your local extension office. Talk to who you know. If you don't know how to get a hold of the state pest control division, then contact your extension office. They can help you find that contact. They can help you monitor it, check on it, send it in, whatever you need help with. The important thing is that if you are not in an area where there's already an infestation that's well known, then reporting it so that we can get either early action or preventative maintenance done. And this is one of the things that I think frustrates a lot of people, is because there's multiple messages that come out with infestations of these invasive species. And that's basically due to when you first start out and you may have one or two and you're looking at it, you're on a seek and destroy mode, right? You want to get in there and get rid of it quick so it doesn't have time to spread. But then once it gets established, the message changes a little bit into a monitor and control. And then once it gets to an infestation stage, then the message changes again to kill them all.
That sounds like a Terminator movie.
But the reason the message changes is because there are different actions that need to be done at different stages of the infestation. And we learn more, right? So we're changing, the research is developing, and we're learning more as we go. Pennsylvania took a big hit for the rest of the country, and they jumped in with both feet into the deep end and started working on, all right, how do we control this pest? How do we monitor this pest? And they have developed a plethora of great information, and, the partnerships between the university and the Department of Agriculture and even the police departments, those partnerships are essential in making sure that you're monitoring and able to control a severe infestation where you're losing crops. And so, we all owe a debt to Pennsylvania. So thanks, guys and gals.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they're vineyards, orchards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, even residential areas, parks, it all took such a hit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just agriculture that's taking the impact. Well, of course, we all eat, right? And so when things affect agriculture, they do affect everybody. But, I have family that lives out in the Philadelphia area, or at least on the outskirts, and they try to fly in the house. They poop all over the steps. They get slippery. There's a tripping hazard or a slipping hazard. It's really frustrating to deal with. They have to power wash their steps and wash their cars more frequently because of the honeydew. And there's wasp issues and bee issues, especially if you have an allergy. Make sure you keep that EpiPen ready if you are in an area that's infested. It's just a frustrating species.
And Karen, I'm looking at a list here of plants that spotted lanternfly has been spotted on, mainly in Pennsylvania, but in the U.S. Grape, apple, cherry, box elder, maples, birch, hickory, ash, dogwood, American hazelnut, Tree of Heaven, autumn olive, hollyhock, serviceberry.
There's over 80 plants that they like.
Yeah, just about everything.
Anything with sap, right? I mean, even black walnut. You think of the juglans chemical that's in there that is the allelopathic chemical around it. They still will go to black walnuts. They don't care about that really strong chemical because Tree of Heaven, their preferred host, also is allelopathic. It also has that type of chemical in it, slightly different than the juglones, but they don't care. I mean, they're non-specific predators, and they'll go out and they will find these whatever plants got sap. That's the one they're feeding on at that moment, and then they move on in these large swaths. So it's almost you think of the biblical locust storms where they come in all at once and feed, and then they move on to the next place. And that's what they do, and that's why it's so difficult to get a handle on them, and why you have to be ready for them when they arrive, because they're not going to arrive one or two. They're going to arrive one, and then next year there'll be one, and then the year after that there'll be 500. So you really have to have a plan in place for your farm to be able to control and reduce the risk associated with this insect.
And I think of the sugar maples up in the New England states. That's
So we actually had this conversation during the training about sugar maples and should maple producers be worried, because maple is one of the preferred hosts. However, they do prefer red maple to sugar maple, so there's a blessing there. But what they did recommend is if you have a sugar bush or an orchard or a vineyard or whatever, and you also have Tree of Heaven, to go through and remove all of the little Tree of Heaven. Get rid of the stuff that is spread throughout the area and narrow it down to just 1 to maybe 3 large Tree of Heavens that you're going to use as your trap trees. And you can put a circle trap on there to monitor. You inspect those few trees because you've narrowed it down. Now you have time to go out, because there's no way you can go out and check all the Tree of Heavens in this area. It's just overwhelming. But if you have it narrowed down to 1 or 2, maybe 3 trap trees, once you have identified that you do have spotted lanternfly, then you can utilize an insecticide, a systemic insecticide, to go up through the tree, wait till the tree is done blooming, and then you put that up in the tree. And that will help to control the spotted lanternfly, because they'll be attracted to that tree, and control them by poisoning them through that trap tree host.
Yeah, but that has its complications in itself. Even just trying to get rid of an area of smaller Tree of Heaven. Tree of Heaven's a tricky one. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where cutting it down is not going to cut it.
No.
No pun intended, right? But it does require chemical treatment. We do have programs in place to get rid of Tree of Heaven. So if you have questions about getting rid of Tree of Heaven, that's a whole other show. That's a whole other armada of chemicals and protocols that we would love to help you, assist you with.
And there is funding out there to help you with that.
And yeah.
So keep that in mind. If you need to do some Tree of Heaven eradication on your property, there is funding out there, especially if you are a farm or you are managing a woodlot. So that's what Extension's here for, right?
Yeah, and it never hurts to check. I know funding depends on states.
That's true. That's a good point.
Sometimes depends on counties. Sometimes depends on operation. But it never hurts to. But you're right, Karen. There is a lot of funding for invasive nuisance species out there, and sometimes it varies by county. But it doesn't hurt to check. Again, you have extension offices just about in every county. You have your farm bureaus. You have your USDA office, your NRCS services. There are plenty of places to check and figure this stuff out depending on where you are. But managing Tree of Heaven is going to be a great way to help in managing spotted lanternfly.
Indeed, yeah. I can't stress enough how important it is that everybody is on board with this, and everybody is out there looking for this insect and doing what they can to help control it. It's going to impact the health of our fruit trees, our nut trees, our grapes, our hops. So we need your help. So please get to know what this bug looks like. If you need a card to carry around in your pocket for when you're walking the dog, I'm sure that we can make that happen. You can reach out to your extension office or your Department of Agriculture and say, hey, we want a training for our club or our group so that we can know what to look for. If you work with a transportation office, if you work for, a city bus system, or if you have a train yard, we've done a lot of outreach to train yards because we found that those are key areas for spreading of this insect, that they help a ride on the train, but they aren't getting off until the train slows down. So they just kind of grab on, hunker down, and wait till the train slows down. Whenever they stop somewhere to turn or, to reload, unload, whatever, that's where a lot of the transmission has occurred. That's how they've moved most frequently. Also, highway corridors. So if you work at a truck stop, or if you're a trucker, we definitely need your help on this to know what to look for. Check your wheel wells, squash any bugs you see if you find them on your truck. If you're in an area where there's no spotted lanternfly and you find some bugs or eggs on your truck, notify the local Department of Agriculture and say, hey, what do I do? And they'll walk you through what needs to be done at that point. Typically, if you're just passing through, you can scrape them into some alcohol, kill them, or they can come help out. But
and just do a walk around and check, especially if you're staying overnight in one of the quarantine areas.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you kind of look at and see what areas are quarantined, that I-70, I-80 from New Jersey all the way through Pennsylvania, there's a lot of quarantine areas in those highways.
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of it, especially if you overnight somewhere.
Yeah, and if you're not working, and you're just traveling for pleasure, you're visiting relatives, you're camping, you're going to a dog show, who cares? Whatever you're doing, if you think you may be going through an area where there may be spotted lanternfly, just give a quick check of your car and take that extra few minutes to help protect everything, really.
Yeah, and in Ohio, it's been found in Cleveland, it's been found in Jefferson County. It's been found in Belmont, so it's here, just not in those large numbers yet. But it's been found as far west as counties in, I guess it would be eastern Indiana.
Yeah, so down by Cincinnati, southern Indiana, and that was basically someone had moved to the area and had brought it with them, or they had a lot of friends that came and visited and may have brought it with them. So
and as far as east as Massachusetts, so it's up in New York. A lot of areas that do have horticulture products.
And another horticultural product that we don't think about that a lot of people use around their landscapes is stone. They lay their eggs on stones. So it's important to, if you're buying some nice, pretty rocks to put around your home, and they may be coming from a quarry in Pennsylvania, check them out, give them a good once over. If they look like they got a splotch of mud on them, you can't be too careful. You have to check it. But for homeowners, one of the greatest things is that you can actually smother those egg masses with just a horticultural oil, the golden spray. What is that called?
It's golden pest spray oil.
Golden pest spray oil is labeled for spotted lanternfly. You basically need a 50-50 mix of water and this horticultural oil.
It's a soybean oil, essentially.
Yeah. And then you just use a hand sprayer and you can spray it on any egg masses that you find. You spray it until they're saturated. You don't want to make it run off, but you do want to make sure it's thoroughly saturated, because what you're doing is using that oil to cut off their oxygen and keep them from being able to hatch out of those eggs. Again, you have to use that when it's above 40 degrees.
Yes.
And there are certain plants you shouldn't be using horticultural oils on, that you can actually damage the plant. When you're looking at a greenhouse or something, then you also may be increasing the sun. So you may have some phytotoxicity. You need to read the label. And if you have questions on what you should or should not be spraying it on, it's on the label, for one. And reading the label is actually a good thing to do. It is the law, and it's long and it's boring, but it's got some really good information on it. And reach out to your extension office, and we can help you interpret the label if it's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, and that label, it's I think people get complacent when things aren't restricted, but
so true.
Whether it's something's restricted or not, if you don't follow the label, you're breaking the law. So you can't treat them differently, whether restricted or over the counter, because if you don't follow that label, you're breaking a law either way. So you're going to be liable. So just please, critical thing to do is read the label, and it'll prevent damages. So, the thing about the 40 degrees and freezing temperatures just will ruin the crop, the tree, if you have oils all over it.
And, for horticultural spray oils, you also need to pay attention to hot days, right? If it's too hot out and you get it on the leaves, then you can also damage leaves. So if you're using it to treat for mites or things like that, you have to pay attention to those things. You have to read the label, and you need to understand how it is going to affect the plant as a whole, regardless of the temperature.
Yeah. Directions for use, personal protective equipment, mixing instructions, those are all critical parts. And then there are a lot of times it's broken down by crop and insect. It'll give you a rate. It'll give you how many times you can apply it for that, how to apply it for that. Really pay attention to what you're applying it on. And remember, it might be different from one crop to the next.
And just as a reminder for those people in West Virginia, should you come across what you think is spotted lanternfly, we do encourage you to report it, and you want to go to bugbusters@wvda.us.
And in Ohio, we have an Ohio State program called Spot the Spot. It has reporting instructions, it has videos, information, and a lot, even management strategies. So Spot the Spot for Ohio State University.
And if you just want some general information, Hungry Pests from the U.S., from APHIS, hungrypests.com will take you to some really great information and things you can apply for your state. If you have an opportunity to do an educational program on spotted lanternfly, even if it's not in your state yet, it's really important that you're aware of it and working towards watching for it. And unfortunately, we're out of time today. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about bugs anyway. But thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.